For some teams, there's a huge mountain to climb to stay in the league they're in. For others, they might have just done enough. And also, two huge games for two Tier 3 clubs this weekend, and we're covering it all on the Women's Football Chat. Yes, hello and welcome to this week's Women's Football Chat, your weekly show dedicated to the FAWNL, that's tiers 3 and 4 of the Women's Football Pyramid here in England. My name is Chris Gadsby, here every Thursday at 6 p.m, bringing you the very latest from all 6 divisions within the FAWNL. Some really important results in the grand scheme of things over the course of the past week, and looking ahead to this weekend, an almost full programme of league action and two huge FA Cup games, both for Wolves and for Forest. But we will get on to all of that later on in the show. What we will start with, as we always do here on the Women's Football Chat, unless there's something significant going on, is the Northern Premier Division results. So we'll crack straight down into it because we've got a lot of stuff to get through today. AFC 5-0, Nottingham Forest 6. Big victory for Carly Davis's side, and this was a 10-player victory as well. Molly Green sent off for Forest, but they took the lead. Alice Keatley in the 13th minute, Sophie Domingo in the 45th, 2-0 at half-time. Charlotte Greengrass then 57 and 90 plus 10. Loanne Worsey in the 87th and Natalie Johnson in the 94th. Big 6-0 victory for Forest. Wolves, though, not able to help Forest out at the top of the table. A 3-0 away defeat to Newcastle United. Paige Gale in the 40th and the 73rd minute. One for Jasmine McQuaid in the 93rd minute as well. So a 3-0 victory for Newcastle, but not a disgraceful result for Wolves by any means there. Halifax, big victory for them, as buoyed by their Cup quarter-final victory. Last weekend, sorry. They are now with, kind of climbing up the table somewhat. 5-1 over Stourbridge. Goals in this one to Halifax. One to Ellie White in just the 3rd minute. Monique Watson in the 18th. Brittany Sanderson with her first in the 21st minute. Jessica Lowe gets one back for Stourbridge on the half-hour mark before Sanderson gets her second in the 48th minute. Lucy Sowerby also with one in the 44th. So 4-1 at half-time, 5-1 it finished, and a very good victory for Halifax, which has done them wonders in the Northern Premier Division table, which we'll see in a moment. And West Brom beating Derby by 2-1. Very important 3 points for West Bromwich Albion. Goals in this one. Neve Deasy in the 45th minute had West Brom 1-0 up at half time. Derby equalised early in the second half. Dulcie O'Connor in the 47th minute, but then Mariam Mahmood in the 58th minute got what would prove to be the winner for West Brom. They lead and win by 2-1. What that means then for the table is it's not looking good for the teams at the bottom. So no movement at all in the Northern Premier Division. So teams haven't actually jumped or dropped any places, but the gaps have changed. So Newcastle and Forest at the top. They both win. That gap remains the same, 4 points. Burnley, who didn't play this weekend, are in third. They are 8 points behind Newcastle, but they have 2 games in hand. Feds remain 4th. Wolves remain 5th, although after that defeat to Newcastle, they are now 17 points off the top of the table. They had the opportunity to reduce it, and with a couple of games in hand as well, it was not out of the question that if they were able to go on a good run, then they could pull themselves into the periphery of the conversation come the end of the season. But that is now gone. Wolves, even with 2 games in hand, if they win both of those, they're still 11 points away from the top of the table, and you're asking then Newcastle to lose 4 of their remaining 9 games, having only lost 1 all season. So Wolves are not going to be in the conversation this year. Neither are Liverpool Feds, although we kind of knew that already. So it is a 3-horse race at the top of the Northern Premier Division table. Down towards the bottom is where it's getting interesting, because wins for West Brom and for Halifax mean it's now a 6-point gap to safety for Huddersfield Town. And with their inferior goal difference, that is more like 7. And it is a 9-point gap, but with the inferior goal difference may as well be 10 points for AFC Fylde, who only have 9 games left to play. So it looks as though in the Northern Premier Division, in my opinion, unless Huddersfield can go on some sort of run, that the relegation is set. And when you look at the games that Huddersfield have got, it's not out of the question. But with 9 games to go, they've got to play Wolves, they've got to travel to Forest, they've got Liverpool Feds who are towards the top. Their next game is Derby, but they have also got Fylde, West Brom, Halifax. So they have got teams, in and around them, so to speak, in that defence. So in that run-in, sorry. Fylde, with only 9 games to go, they need a minimum of 3 wins and some draws, realistically 4 wins. They've got Burnley and Wolves and Feds in there as well as their next 3, so they're playing 3 of the top 5. Then there's Stoke, Derby. They finish with West Brom, Huddersfield, Halifax, so it's not out of the question, but you've got to be within 4 points by the time you get to those final 3 games, probably. Yes, they can win all 3 of those games, but if the gap is as it is at the minute, winning all 3 of them still wouldn't leapfrog Halifax. So it's Fylde needs to be picking up some points against these teams at the top in order to have a chance of survival. Southern Premier Division then, and it's very much actually a similar situation in the Southern Premier Division as it was in the Northern Premier Division there. So big victory for Cardiff City at home to Billericay Town. Chloe Lloyd in the 19th minute, Ellie Sargent in the 3rd minute of added time at the end of the first half. One for Mayer for Billericay Town in the 81st minute, pulled one back, but weren't able, were Billericay, to get themselves level in that game. Ipswich 0, Portsmouth 1, lead to Rutherford in just the 2nd minute, and then Portsmouth holding on for the entire game to that 1-0 lead that they had, managed to secure the victory, which has done them good at the top of the table. London Bees 1, Oxford United 4, 2-0 to Oxford at half time in this one, thanks to goals from Jenna Legg and Catherine Wiseman. Legg then got her 2nd of the game 10 minutes into the second half. Zoe Barrett in the 86th minute made it, got Oxford's 4th. The 1 for London Bees, Tiana Nee Chambers in the 72nd minute. So London had pulled it back to 3-1 before Oxford then made it 4. And a thriller at Stadium MK. 3-4 in favour of Plymouth Argyle, who went down to 10 right at the end of the game in added time here. MK Dons, they don't have their lineup on full time yet, but their goals coming to Gould in the 40th minute, Wood in the 55th, and Mitchell in the 93rd. Plymouth's a hat-trick for Ellie Sara, 43, 74 and 76, and 1 for Jade Barrow in the 73rd minute as well. So really, for Plymouth Argyle, 3 goals in the space of 4 minutes. completely changed that game around. They went from 2-1 down to 4-2 in front in the space of 4 minutes. And that has again done them a world of good in the Southern Premier Division table. You have a look. We're going to go straight actually towards the bottom. Wins for Cardiff City and wins for Plymouth Argyle means that that gap to the bottom two now is 8 points for Chatham, and they've got the inferior goal difference as well. So it's 3 wins for Chatham. London Bees, you're looking at 4 wins to get themselves out of the relegation zone. London Bees only have 8 games to go, so you've got to win half of your remaining games. And London Bees, in their remaining games, have to face #United, Oxford, Rugby, Portsmouth. There's 4 of the 8 games that they're probably going to lose. So then you have to win the other 4 games. MK Dons, who are in 6th, Cheltenham, who are in 8th, big relegation game with Chatham, who are in 11th, and Plymouth, who are in 7th. London Bees have to win those games in order to avoid relegation. But we are in the situation where you could well be relegated by the middle of March because of how well the other teams are doing. Chatham Town, they've got 9 games to go. Again, they need a lot of wins as well, but they've got Cardiff City coming up. That's a huge game for them. They've also got to face Billericay Town. They've got that game with London that I've previously mentioned. But Chatham, they've also got Rugby, #Ipswich, as 3 of their last 4 games. So you almost feel like Chatham need to get their points done early, because when you've got a # and a Rugby and an Ipswich in the final 4 games, you're looking at where the points are going to come from in those final 4 games, and they're probably not. So they've got to be done early. So Plymouth, with an 11-point gap now to the relegation zone, have probably done enough. Cheltenham Town, they have a 9-point gap to the relegation zone. The goal difference isn't incredible, so they have almost, you would say, done enough, but they're just slightly aware. A win is probably enough for Cheltenham now. Billericay and Cardiff, you're probably looking at the same situation. 1 win for them, particularly if Cardiff can beat Chatham this weekend. That should probably be enough for Cardiff. Towards the top then, Oxford United with their victory. Rugby didn't play, so Oxford are up to 3rd. Still far too far back away from Portsmouth, who are now 3 points clear of #United, and they still have a game in hand and the superior goal difference. So that is essentially a 4-point gap already for Portsmouth. So they're looking very, very good heading into the back end of the season. Of course, once we get to kind of 4 or 5 games to go, so once we get into kind of the middle of March, we'll start looking at the run-ins in a bit more detail as well. Still not an easy run-in for Portsmouth. They've still got Ipswich and Rugby Borough, but both of those are at home. But they have their fair share of Chatham, who are currently 11th, Cardiff currently 12th, London Bees on the Cardiff currently 10th, London Bees on the final day, who are 12th. They've got also a game against obviously Plymouth, who are in the bottom half. So it is very much plenty of opportunities for Portsmouth to pick up points when you compare it with #, who have got Ipswich and Oxford in there as well. They've also got London, Cardiff, Chatham, Billericay, Cheltenham, Plymouth. So actually, in the 8 games that #United have got left, 5 of them are against is it 6 of them? London Bees, Chatham, Cardiff, Billericay, Cheltenham, Plymouth. So yeah, other than the games against Ipswich and Oxford in the next few weeks, #United, with their 8 games remaining, have got to play the current bottom 6. So it's a nice run-in for # to have, but Portsmouth have got that point advantage. That's the situation then in Tier 3. As you can see from those opening kind of 10 minutes or so, I almost feel like even though it's not mathematically confirmed yet, relegation in the north and the south is probably confirmed. Unless a team can go on a big run. Interestingly, in both of these divisions, the relegated teams coming out of Tier 3 will almost certainly involve lateral movement in Tier 4, because you've got two northern teams in the sense of Fylde and Huddersfield, two quite northern-based sides coming down. They'll both go into Division 1 North. So you're then looking at a team coming back into the Midlands. The most southern teams are Barnsley, but they're in a title challenge anyway, and Stockport in the north. And then you look at the Southern Premier Division here. Chatham and London, obviously both London-based sides. So then you'd need a South East team to move back to South West. Chesham have only been in South East for 2 years, so you're looking at Worthing or Ashford at the moment, or of course possibly the Tier 5 team that's coming up if they're further over onto the western side. So they expect a bit of lateral movement over the summer if everything stays as it is at the moment. Let's move through then into Tier 4. Some somewhat surprising results in this. Boldmere St Michael's only beating Sheffield by 1-0, and they needed a 93rd minute penalty from Anna Wilcox to achieve this. We mentioned last week the troubles off the pitch that Boldmere St Michael's are having, and it seems to be translating onto the pitch, only getting a 1-0 victory at home, and thanks to a penalty to Sheffield, who will be devastated by that, as the point would have been enough to take them out of the relegation zone. Loughborough Lightning also faltering somewhat with a 3-3 draw against Lincoln City. Goals in this one, Lincoln had taken the lead actually through Madison Green in the 11th minute. And then there's debate with Loughborough. Loughborough say Lauren Purchase got a hat-trick, but they also say it went in off a Lincoln head. Anyway, so Lauren Purchase in the 23rd minute, then an own goal in the 32nd minute to make it 2-1 to Loughborough. That's how they went in at half-time. Lincoln City, though, through Green again 3 minutes after the break, made it 2-2, and then Hinks in the 57th minute put Lincoln in front by 3-2. And Loughborough, very similar to Boldmere, Loughborough needed a 90+5 minute equaliser through Purchase again in order to get a point out of that game. So very interesting at the top of Division 1 Midlands how teams seem to be faltering somewhat. Notts County, another heavy defeat for them against Northampton Town. Northampton Town, their info's not on full time yet, but 2 for Farrer in the 39th and the 57th minute, 1 from the penalty spot from Dix in the 61st and then in the 76th as well, Mallon in the 80th and Ridley in the 82nd. And then 1 for Leafield Athletic and 5 for Peterborough United. So good win for Peterborough. Tara Kirk, 29th and 42nd minute, had them 2-0 in front. Sienna McCann-Lloyd just before half-time, 2-1. Leafield very much still in the game. But Peterborough second half, Eva Driscoll-King in the 70th, Rebecca Mears in the 86th, Renee Bennett in the 88th. A 5-1 victory for Peterborough United means that in the table, Loughborough at the top still, but level on points now with Boldmere St Michael's. Loughborough have lost that advantage that they had with that draw against Lincoln City. Peterborough United up to third because Sporting Cowser did not play. However, the dropped points for Loughborough Lightning now mean that if Sporting Cowser were to win both of their games in hand, they would go top of the table by a point, because the teams above them have been faltering. So do not rule out Sporting Cowser in this. Very much, in my opinion, a 4-team race. Those top 4 still very much within a shout of getting into Tier 3. That's the only change, is Peterborough above Sporting Cowser. Down towards the bottom, of course, Leafield Athletic lose, Sheffield lose, Notts County lose. So Sheffield, so what I mean by that penalty being so devastating for Sheffield, because that point for them, if they had not conceded that penalty, would have meant they were out of the relegation zone. And it's opportunities like that that they may look back on towards the end of the season and go, that was our opportunity to get out of the bottom two. When you look at the games that Sheffield have got left, they've got Sporting Cowser twice. They've got 9 games to go. Sporting Cowser twice, Peterborough, Boldmere, Loughborough. Now that's 5 out of the 9 where they're playing the top 4 teams, but they also have a huge game against Leafield Athletic, and there's one against Leek Town as well, who are only in 9th. So the opportunities are still there for Sheffield. For Notts County, it looks almost more difficult. Loughborough, Peterborough, Boldmere as well. That's 3 of their 8 games. They've got Northampton again, who just beat them 6-0 away from home. Then they've got to go to Northampton on the final day of the season. You look at Notts County, you've got Solihull in 6th. They've got Lincoln and Leek, which are the games they've really got to target. But you almost say that Sheffield have got a bit of a better opportunity than Notts County, and Sheffield have got the better goal difference as well. Leafield Athletic, better goal difference than Notts County, and they're only 3 points away from safety themselves, so don't count out Leafield Athletic. Leek Town, Lincoln City, still probably looking over their shoulders. Yes, they've got the better goal differences, but when they've got to play these teams as well, if they end up coming on the wrong side of a result against these sides, then they will certainly be in the conversation. If Sheffield, for example, get the victory over Leafield Athletic and suddenly they're on 11, and then you've got Notts against Leek and Lincoln, it could all very well change down towards the bottom. So Division 1 Midlands, plenty still to be decided. Division 1 North, 4 games to go through. Chester Street Town 1, Leeds United 3. So Chester Street Town, a relatively close game, 2-0 down at half time. They were Ellie Dobson in the 14th minute and Leonie Price in the 32nd. Then goals in the second half, one for Jenny Ashton for Chester Street Town, one for Jessica Razu in the 80th minute for Leeds United. Barnsley really struggling at the moment are Barnsley, and they lose by 3-2 to Durham Sestra, despite being 2 goals up at half time. Autumn Housley in the 4th minute and Emily Pierpont in the 27th put Barnsley in control of this game. But in the second half, Durham Sestra, Jennifer Knowles 56, Ella Rowell 66 and Abby Holmes 85 mean that Barnsley lose again. Durham Sestra getting the win there, and what made it worse for Barnsley is wins for both Hull and for Middlesbrough. Hull City a 3-2 victory over Norton and Stockton Ancients. Goals in this one for Hull, Ellie Tanser in the 5th and the 10th, Helen Linsky in the 58th. Norton's goals a brace for Bianca Owens, 23rd minute from the penalty spot and 34th. But York City 2, Middlesbrough 3, goals in this one. Ellen Turnbull in the 14th minute. Nicole Havry in the 29th had Middlesbrough 2 goals to the good. York City pulled themselves back into it. Grace Hemmings 37, Faye Singleton 54 means it's 2-2, but Middlesbrough 5 minutes from time through Jessica Met mean it's 3-2 is how it finished, and that means Middlesbrough are top of the table. Although they have played 2 games more than both Hull and Barnsley, who sit 1 win behind them. Durham Sestra also have a game in hand on Middlesbrough, and they are only 6 points back. So there is, still there plenty of opportunity for probably most likely 3 in the sense of Hull and Barnsley. Durham Sestra probably on the periphery of the conversation. But you look at that again and you go, well, there are still loads of teams, and there's plenty to play in the North. Like teams they've still got 10 games to play. The North, of course, generally struggles a bit more when we get the weather than the other divisions do. But Middlesbrough next couple of games are Barnsley and Durham Sestra, so that's probably season defining for Middlesbrough if they can take points away from those as well. Down towards the bottom then, FC United and Manchester didn't play. Chester Street Town lose, York City lose, Norton and Stockton Ancients lose. So it's all the same down towards the bottom. Still, again, plenty that can be decided there, with 1 point between Chester Street Town and safety, 3 points between FC United and Manchester and safety, although with the goal difference that's more like 4, and plenty of teams, Chorley, Norton, even Doncaster to an extent, looking over their shoulder towards the bottom there of the table and trying to stay in Tier 4. So yeah, Division 1 North, still plenty to look at with 10 games to go. And with 10 games to go as well, you're looking, as we've done previously, looking at some of the run-ins, and you're going, well, with 10 games to go, you've pretty much got to play everybody. So the run-ins at the moment in the North are almost pointless to look at, because they have just got so much left. South East then, just 3 games to go through. AFC Wimbledon beating Cambridge United by 6-0. Emily Donovan, 20th and 35th minute. Ashley Hinks with a hat-trick in the 56th, the 88th and the 90th, plus an own goal in the 70th minute, meaning it's a comfortable 6-0 victory for AFC Wimbledon. Haywards Heath Town then losing by 2-1 to Actonians. This is despite Haywards taking the lead in the first minute of the game through Garcia. And it was late goals really for Actonians. 2 for Amber Dredge, 80th and 95th minute, that turns that game completely on its head. And Actonians win by 2-1. So really, turnaround for Actonians there. And Norwich City beating London Seaward by the same scoreline, although they took a 2-0 lead in this game. Ellie Smith in the 18th minute, Natasha Snelling in the 41st minute, Catherine Long getting one back just before half time. So all the scoring in that game done in the first half. Norwich City keeping up their challenge at the top. We have a look at the table. So Norwich City go above Worthing by merit of Worthing not playing this weekend. Wimbledon, of course, win, so they keep up their 3-point gap. Norwich City have a game in hand, though, but they do have an inferior goal difference. So Worthing dropped down to 3rd, but they didn't play. And then Actonians jump above Cambridge United in the mid-table. You look down towards the bottom, and Haywards Heath Town, after being in a winning position, they end up losing the game. So only 8 games to play for Cambridge City and Haywards Heath Town. AFC Sudbury have 9, Chesham have 10. I maintain what I said last week. I do believe that Chesham now have done enough. Particularly with their better goal difference as well. You're talking about 3 wins for Haywards Heath Town from their final 8, and 2 wins and a draw for Cambridge City. Yes, those 2 sides have that game coming up against each other, but you look at Cambridge City, for example, with their 8 games to go and them needing results in 3 of those games, and they've got Worthing, Wimbledon, Norwich City. That's 3 of them gone. So then you need results in 3 of the other 5 games. And then you've got to look at the fact they've got Ashford, who are 5th. They've got London Seaward, who are down in 8th. That's one they can go for. But they've really got to be targeting Haywards Heath Town and AFC Sudbury, who are 10th and 12th. But both of those are away from home as well. So it's not an easy run-in for Cambridge City to get all of the points that they need. Haywards Heath Town, sort of a similar situation. They need, they only need 1 win to get out of the relegation zone for Sudbury. But if you're wanting to catch Chesham, and you need 3 wins from your remaining 9 games, and you've got Norwich and Worthing as the next 2, you've also then got AFC Wimbledon. They've also got Actonians as well, who are in the top half of the table, and then all of a sudden getting those wins to catch a Chesham, you're needing to win, for all 4 of the games that realistically you could win. So I do believe that Chesham, particularly with 10 games to go, have probably done enough. They've got 2 against AFC Sudbury as well to Chesham United. I think they have done enough to avoid relegation for this year. I think it's 2 from those bottom 3 in Division 1 South East. Division 1 Southwest, then plenty to talk about here with a full programme of games in Division 1 Southeast, and exactly what I thought would happen happened in the big fight between the 2 at the top. It finished in a 1-1 draw. Kenny Thompson in the 45th minute, Jenna Markham in the 47th minute mean that Bournemouth and Exeter tied at 1 each. So neither of them have been defeated yet this season in the league. Both of them lose their 100% record, but they still remain well clear of everybody else at the top of the table. Moving down then, Abingdon United 0, Moneyfields 3. Goals in this one. They had an own goal in the second half, which really put the game to bed. But Carolina Haya-Taylor in the 30th minute put Moneyfields in front, and then Kirsty Pearce in the 48th minute made it 2 before that own goal. A score draw between Bridgwater and Keynsham Town. Bridgwater have actually put the goal scorer up between me doing the graphics and recording the show. Chloe Snook with the goal for Bridgwater, and Vicky Vipond in the 61st minute with the goal for Keynsham Town. Portishead Town 2, Maidenhead United 1. An own goal in the 32nd minute helped Portishead Town to this victory. Stella Morgan 20 minutes from time from the penalty spot with their other goal. Isabella Stockton with the only goal for Maidenhead United. Another very difficult afternoon for Chelsea on the wrong side of a 15-0 defeat to Swindon Town, who opened the scoring in the first minute through Gipsy Vivesh. Like I said, in the first minute before Annabelle Colston decided that she wanted plenty of match balls. 5th, 12th, 20th, 32nd, 50th, 60th and 82nd minutes. 7 goals on the game for her. 1 for Georgia Clifford in the 28th, 2 for Megan Jarvis in the 46th and the 58th. And then all 3 substitutes that came on also scored. Holly Randall in the 70th, Mia Mugford in the 86th, Georgia Vandries in the 89th, and then another one for Helena Diaz-Butcher in the 91st minute. 15-0 Swindon Town winning that one. And then a big result for Torquay United. They beat Southampton Women's by 2 goals to 1. 1-0 up at half-time through Ella Stevens. They then equalised, did Southampton Women's, 9 minutes from time. Oceania Adams with the goal. But then in the 93rd minute, Emily Eaton got the winner for Torquay United. And that is a huge 3 points for Torquay United, because it lifts them out of the relegation zone. Yes, Southampton Women have got 3 games in hand, but they have had games in hand for a long time and not been using them. So Torquay United out of the relegation zone, and that would have been their goal at the start of the season after getting promoted, is stay in the division. Exeter City and AFC Bournemouth, as I said, both have lost their 100% record, but they're still undefeated, and the gap remains the same, with Bournemouth having 2 games in hand. Moneyfields are back up above Abingdon after their victory over Abingdon. They have 3 games in hand over Swindon Town, so expect to see Moneyfields probably climb into 3rd, but they are just too far back from the big 2 to mount any sort of challenge. They're 14 points away from Exeter City with 2 games in hand. That just makes it 8 points. And I just can't see where Exeter and Bournemouth are going to drop all those points from this season. In towards the middle then, Keynsham Town, Bridgwater, obviously they had their draw. Portishead over Maidenhead. So Portishead, they don't climb any places, but they are now 9 points away from the relegation zone. You'd think they've probably done enough. Maidenhead still looking over their shoulders ever so slightly. But of course, in South West, It's a case of which one is going to join Chelsea rather than which two are going to go down, because Chelsea, they are 7 points away from safety. The goal difference, they need 8, so they need 3 wins from their final 9 games, and they've got to play basically everybody up at the top again. They've got Exeter again, Bournemouth again, Swindon again, Moneyfields again, Abingdon again. They've got Keynsham as well. So they've got 9 games left to play. They've got to play the current top 6. It's just not going to happen for Chelsea this season. The interesting one is going to be who's going to join them then. Are Southampton women actually going to be able to use the games in hand that they've got? They've got a busy schedule over the next month or so because the FAWNL have actually done a really good job of putting all of these games in hand in around February, March time. But by the time we get to the middle of March, everybody's played 17, 18 games. And then actually there's loads of free weekends towards the end of the season, which means if there is anything left over or anything postponed or cup games, etc., there are free weekends that they can be slotted into. And then everybody should finish on the 5th of May. So we avoid what we had last year. So that is a very good thing that the FAWNL have done. It does mean Southampton women are going to be very busy over the course of the next few weeks as they make up all of those games in hand, but they have to get points from them because they are in real trouble. Right, that is all of the results from the past 7 days. Let's now have a look at the fixtures starting in the Northern Premier Division. Only 5 games in the north because Wolves and Forest both in FA Cup action. We'll get onto that later. Big one at the top. Burnley hosting Newcastle. Newcastle can almost kind of take Burnley out of the title race with a win. If that gap was to get to 11 points. Yes, with 2 games in hand, Burnley can bring that back down to 5. But Newcastle with a win could do themselves a world of good in this title fight. Burnley with a win could bring themselves right back into it. They'd be on 29 points. They'd be 5 points behind Newcastle with 2 games in hand. A Burnley win would also obviously help Forest out because Burnley can only go 2 points in front of Forest if they win both their games in hand. But if they can stop Newcastle from getting any points, Forest will then have a game in hand over Newcastle. They could win that and bring it into 1 point. And then you've got the top 3 sides separated by just 2 points. And that would make for a very interesting final day if that was the gap as we went into the final day. Derby County against Huddersfield Town, 6th against 11th. Halifax against West Brom. Big opportunity for both of those sides to really pull themselves away from the bottom 2 and almost secure their safety in the Northern Premier Division. Liverpool Feds against AFC Fylde is 4th against 12th, and Stoke City against Stourbridge 8th against 7th. So huge game at the top, important games down towards the bottom as well. Feels like that's going to be a weekly saying in the run-in up to April. Southern full programme. Billericay Town against MK Dons. That is 9th against 6th. Cheltenham Town against Ipswich is 8th against 5th. London Bees against Hashtag United is going to be difficult for London. Hashtag in 2nd. London at the bottom of the table. Oxford against Portsmouth, 3rd against 1st. One of the big tests that Portsmouth are going to have in their run-in here. Have they got the mettle to go away to the team in 3rd and get the 3 points that they need to keep Hashtag at bay? Plymouth Argyle against Rugby Borough. Again, probably going to be a difficult one. 7th against 4th in that one. Plymouth on a good run of form at the moment. Rugby probably now too far away to get back up into the Championship. First time of asking. Huge game down towards the bottom. Chatham against Cardiff. Chatham really need the win if they're not to really struggle. Cardiff with a win, if they can increase that gap to the bottom to 11 points with 8 games to go, you'd say that Cardiff are going to be safe in the division. So probably season defining for Cardiff City and maybe season defining for Chatham as well. Full programme also in Division 1 Midlands. Boldmere St Michael's against Lincoln City. That is, again, Bournemouth St Michael's. Can they sort themselves out after the trouble they had before their game, or before what should have been their game against Loughborough, and then only just getting past Lincoln City? Big game down towards the bottom as full-time decides to freeze on me. Big game down towards the bottom with Leaford Athletic against Notts County. That is, like I said, a very important one. Here we go, full-time's back for me now. Sometimes does that, just decides, no, I don't want to show you the league tables. Leaford Athletic in 12th, Notts County in 10th. A win for Leaford Athletic, and they would leapfrog Notts County. So really important one for them there. Peterborough against Leek. You'd fancy Peterborough in that one, keep up the challenge at the top. Sheffield at home to Northampton Town. Now, Sheffield will be buoyed by their away performance at Boldmere St Michael's. So despite the fact they're in 11th, Northampton Town are only in 5th. Now, that's an opportunity then. Sheffield could pick up a point in that game. If Leaford Athletic were to beat Notts County, then Notts County could find themselves after this weekend at the bottom of the table with just 7 games to go. Sporting Calza against Loughborough Lightning, big one at the top. If Sporting get a victory there, then they really are in the driving seat to overtake Loughborough. And Sutton Coldfield Town against Solihull Moors, 7th against 6th. 2 teams in mid-table. They're not going to challenge for promotion. They're not going to get dragged in. You wouldn't have fought into a relegation battle. So almost a nothing game between those two sides, although of course they won't see it that way. Division 1 North, full programme again. It's pretty much a full programme. As I said, there's those 2 FA Cup games for Wolves and Forest, and then there is the odd County Cup game as well. Doncaster Rovers Bells against Norton Stockton Ancients, 7th against 9th. FC United of Manchester in 12th, take on Durham Sestra in 4th. Hull City in 2nd, Stockport County in 6th. Leeds United in 5th, Chorley in 8th. Middlesbrough against Barnsley, 1st against 3rd, big game towards the top of Division 1 North. And York City in 10th against Chestnut Street Town in 11th is a huge game towards the bottom. So yet again, for another week running, important games at the top and the bottom of these divisions. Division 1 South East, Haywards Heath Town against Norwich City. It's going to be a difficult one for Haywards Heath, that, with Norwich City trying their best to catch up and overtake Wimbledon. AFC Sudbury against London Seaward, 10th against 8th. Opportunity then perhaps for AFC Sudbury to increase the gap to the bottom 2 themselves. Actonians against Cambridge United, 6th against 7th. Cambridge City against Ashford Town is 11th against 5th. Cheshire United against Wimbledon is 9th against 1st. And Worthing against Queen's Park Rangers is 3rd against 4th. Moving through then finally for league fixtures into Division 1 South West. AFC Bournemouth in 2nd against Torquay United in 10th. Abingdon United against Southampton Women's, that's 5th against 11th. Maidenhead United against Bridgewater United, 9th against 7th. Selsey, bottom of the table, against Keynsham Town in 6th. So probably a difficult weekend for teams towards the bottom to pick up points. Interesting game though at Moneyfields. They're in 4th. They take on Exeter City, who of course were perfect until that draw with Bournemouth. Exeter City winning by 5-3 in Exeter earlier on in the season. So Moneyfields may feel they have an opportunity there to take more points off Exeter at home. Swindon are in County Cup action. That's why there are only 5 games in Division 1 Southwest this weekend. Finally then, away from the league, huge weekend for both Wolves and for Forest. Women's FA Cup 5th round. We are 1 away from the quarter-finals, and it is, well, almost exclusively the top 2 tiers now. Leicester City against Birmingham, Tottenham against Charlton, Arsenal against Manchester City, Wolves hosting Super League side Brighton and Hove Albion at New Buckshead, 2 p.m. That one for Wolves, so they get first bite of the cherry to take a Super League side out of the competition. London City Lionesses against Liverpool, Southampton against Manchester United, Chelsea against Crystal Palace, and then the final tie of the weekend, Nottingham Forest taking on Everton at Grange Park. That's a 4 o'clock start. So hopefully, as far as Forest are concerned, they will have seen Wolves beating Brighton and Hove Albion at 2 p.m. and then they'll be able to follow that up with a victory over Everton at 4 p.m. Going to be a very tough ask for both sides, but both sides have a wonderful opportunity. Just over £100,000 they have grabbed already in the FA Cup, and they get a minimum of £20,000 in this round. If they lose, it's 20,000. If they win, it's an awful lot more than that. And then there's the quarterfinals that we can look forward to. So I will maintain, as I've said throughout this, I cover the Women's FA Cup on this show whilst there is still an FAWNL side in it. So next week we'll do the 5th round results. If both Wolves and Forest have been knocked out, which we hope they won't, then that will then do it for my FA Cup coverage for this season. If one of them gets to the quarter-final, or both of them get to the quarter-final, then we will be covering the quarter-final as well. Hopefully, if both of them get to the quarter-final, they don't draw each other. Because that would be very frustrating. It would be great in the sense that you guaranteed an FAWNL side in the semi-final of the Women's FA Cup, but it would be frustrating that both FAWNL sides draw each other. But maybe that's the best way of securing plenty of funds. Anyway, so yes, those two games also taking place on Sunday. So best of luck to both Wolves and Forest as they take on sides 2 divisions higher in the 5th round of the Women's FA Cup. That will do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. Next week, it is County Cup week, which means that there is barely anything going on in the league. I think there's like 8 games across 6 divisions next week, so we'll have a much closer look at the results and the league tables next week. But thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. I'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m. with all the very latest from those huge games at the top and the bottom of the 6 divisions. But for now, goodbye.